forgotten. He had been forgotten. Again, the walls of his prison seemed to slowly collapse in on him as he hung his head between his knees. He had to remind himself to breathe as suffering flooded his eyes and ran in rivulets down his cheeks. Can you see him? Hear his desperate prayers turn to gut-wrenching pleas for deliverance. See every dream he'd ever had lying shattered on the packed sand beneath his feet, choking, gasping for breath. How could God have allowed this? The death of his freedom, the death of his dreams, and now the death of his identity. The banker was dead. He was dead. And the cupbearer had forgotten his name and his promises. He was a forgotten man. So forgotten today he could even believe that God had. Friends, you know that moment? That moment that you are so lost in the thick of it, you can't make sense of it. Your faith, it is shaking to pieces. And you just can't seem to get a hold of it. Because that man did. His name was Joseph, and in one of the most miraculous stories ever told, he was sold by his own flesh and bone into slavery. He was tempted to commit adultery. He was imprisoned for his integrity. He was forgotten to rot in a penitentiary until summoned to stand before the most powerful king in the world. His pit to palace journey spanning the width of 20 years. 20. Joseph, his faith grew to defy hopelessness, hatred, bars, chains, mistakes, temptation, envy, betrayal, abandonment, enslavement, time, trial, reason, and accusation. His faith that saved not one, but 2 nations, ultimately preserving the bloodline of the Savior of every generation ever born, Joseph. A man who took the stones that made up his suffering, and he built an altar before the Lord, who never stopped being worthy of his praise. Because God was faithful to Joseph, even on his darkest of days. The days that his soul screamed, God, enough! The days that he could barely stand up under the weight of his reality, the chains that rubbed his wrists, raw and bloody, each consecutive trial, proving almost too much, but never beyond what Joseph could shoulder daily. Friend, hear me, sometimes God's provision isn't pretty. But I promise you, it is always steady. And it is exactly what you needed the moment you receive it. Look, I get it, pain is messy, but so is the Bible. The Bible is messy. It's really not full of fairy tales and sparkles. It's raw and it's real and it's humiliatingly honest. It tells the story of once living, breathing, broken people who Jesus just couldn't see living apart from, so he chose to die. Crucified like a convict, shredded until the flesh of his shoulders hung in folds against his hips, back exposed as a wooden cross tore through his tissues to grate against his bones he knew until then. Sorrow, unlike any other, the Son of God dying the death of a monster because he loved us. He loved me, his executioner, and so no one will ever be able to convince me that my God does not know what it means to suffer. And if there is one thing that you and we will never be, it is forgotten. Friend, think about it. What if your darkest moment was designed to be your finest hour? What if true glory is born of suffering and anything worth having doesn't come easy? What if we were never called to be comfortable? I know that Jesus never wasn't. And what if true safety is knowing we're covered come life or death in the hands of our God, and only our mental and emotional and our physical beings can produce a spirit of solid gold, because courage isn't really courage until it's full on thrown into the flames of adversity. Baby, you and mine, our suffering, it was meant to be the fire of iron, hot enough to purify both destroyer and refiner. You throw trash in those flames and it will vanish, but you put gold through that fire and it will only shine brighter. Hear me tonight, you have so much potential. This time in your life, it's not just hell. It's a beautiful crucible. God has not forgotten you. He is finishing the good work He started in you. He is forging you. I'm begging you, baby, don't you settle for these ashes. When by way of fire, you are being fashioned for a greatness only able to be imagined in the mind of our God. It really is not my intention today to make your pain seem small, but to ask you, even though it's terrifying, to be brave with me. I don't speak with the knowledge of hindsight 2020. I speak as one standing in the midst of the carnage. My battlefield is so bloody. These two hands, they are so guilty. My courage, it is not mighty. My fears are many. These 2 years, they are failing me. But my eyes, they see more clearly than ever. You and I, we serve a merciful, He is a merciful God. His love is the same yesterday, today, and forever. My goodness can make it no more, and friend, your brokenness can make it no lesser. It really is my deepest desire that Jesus would change my prayers. Teach me, come welcome not to the danger. I can do no less than pursue His will. Teach me to stop asking for outs and instead pray that when my number is yelled, I will have not only the courage to suffer before a world that watches, but like my Jesus, to suffer well.